next speaker is Mr. Andrew Bainbridge, who is the chair of the Private Infrastructure Development Group, PIDG, which is an innovative infrastructure project developer and investor with a focus on frontier and emerging markets. PIDG investments promote socio-economic development within a just transition to net zero emissions, combat poverty, and contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Andrew is also partner at Gateway Partners, chair of Cable and Wireless Seychelles Limited, and a non-executive director of Seychelles International Mercantile Banking Corporation. Now, may I request Mr. Andrew to please come on stage and address the audience.
When Alexander said, get out of your office and talk to people, I love talking to people whilst I'm traveling. And on my way here, I asked a man in Doha Airport, where I had the great privilege of spending most of yesterday, what he thought the problems in Pakistan were. And he said it was all about politicians. So when I arrived here early this morning, I asked the driver who took me to the hotel what the economy was like and what was going on. And he said it was all about Ukraine. He said it was all about oil. And I think the problem is, it's so easy to simplify this. And I'm not here to make political statements or economic statements. And Pakistan's problems are not all of its own making. Many of them are historical. When you look at the tragedy of last year's floods, you are suffering, as Samina says, the unintended consequences of other people's actions, just as we now worry, as I do with my children, about the unintended consequences of social media. The people who created the Industrial Revolution did not envisage what you're now going through. So, we have to think about how we challenge that. And Samina stole a bit of my thunder by saying that you are one of the top 3 destinations in the world for IT projects. Not because I was going to say that, but because I was going to say one of the things that Pakistan needs to rely upon is the intelligence and ingenuity of its people. Because only that way will you address some of the challenges posed by climate change. Only by maintaining the robust institutions that you have, that those of us who do not live here but visit frequently see written about every day. Like Alexandra, I live in Dubai, so I get to read the papers about Pakistan every day. Only by maintaining those institutions will it give you the societal strength to move forwards. But the change will come from the people in this room. It will come from the leaders of industry. It won't come from people like me doing pro-poor infrastructure. I can assure you, in my meager experience in countries around the world, it is very rare that the change comes from politicians. The change comes from business leaders saying, we've got to find a better way to do it. And also, there is a profitable, better way to do it, and there is. So, as we think about what Pakistan is to do, and I think your challenge is slightly different to many other countries, because as you read about the debates going on around the world, you will read a lot about just and equitable transitions in terms of climate change. You will read about rich countries promising $8.5 billion to South Africa for a just and equitable transition. You will read about another $7 billion for Indonesia, and similarly large amounts for Vietnam. And you will think, why is no one giving us that sort of money for the transition? Because your challenge is not transition of climate, it is not mitigation of your existing emissions. Your challenge, as brought home by the floods last year, is about adaptation and resilience. It is not about transitioning away from a super dirty, emissive culture and economy, but about building an economy that creates jobs, that facilitates, as Samina talks about, some of the IT skills which are distributed. It's not about a lifestyle like Alexander's and mine, where you get on a plane all the time, because you don't need to in the same way you used to. But it is about adaptation and resilience. Adaptation and resilience are critical. So as you think about your businesses, as you think about your capital expenditure, you think about what you're building now that will work in 5 and 10 years' time. Think about how you make those projects more resilient. Now, if you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago to think about adaptation and resilience, I'd have said, yeah, that's all very well, that sounds great. Which business school are you from, and how do I bring that to life in my real world? But I was talking to someone from a university in the UK last week, which has the highest ratio of climate change scientists of anywhere in the world outside Beijing. And he said, we have 2 problems, Andy. The first of them is we have 3 times as much private sector work as we can handle. And the second is we all worry that we're not doing enough good. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, we've got lots of asset management firms that come to us. And as Samina says, the game in town these days is ESG. And what they want is they want us to tell them that they're doing the right things, so that they can put on their marketing materials they're ESG compliant. And I went, well, it's not a bad way to make a living. It's not great, but it's not a bad way to make a living. And he said, yeah, but we've got so much data, and we've got so many predictive capabilities now that we believe we can tell you within 20, 30, and 40 years from now, for an area 60 kilometers by 60 kilometers, what the peak temperature and peak humidity will be during the year. And no one's interested in that, Andy. I said, but that means if I've got a project about actually providing electricity, I can look at the topology of the ground, and that will help me put it in the right place. But you can help me put it in a place that is likely to be much more resilient. And he went, exactly. We can forecast in a way we couldn't. And that, I think, is one of the areas where data, as Samina talks about, capability, as evidenced by the people of Pakistan, and climate come together. So, for all of you in this room, as you're thinking about the future, don't think about it in abstracts. Think about how much more valuable your business will be if you are demonstrably better than your competitors in building resilience for the future. This isn't just about making it better for the people of the country. This isn't just about reducing the impact of disasters. You can have a competitive advantage by doing this well. So let me finish with a couple of shameless plugs. Part of the PIDG group, which you heard a little bit about, is InfraZamin, headed here in Pakistan by Mihan Rahman, who's at the front here, known to many of you. PIDG does pro-port infrastructure around the world, and we've been doing it for 20 years. We've provided newer, improved infrastructure to 220 million people so far. And that's, if you come from a private sector background, as I do, that's great. If you look at the scale of the challenge, it's a start, but only a start. So InfraZamin will do local currency guarantees. It will work with companies such as yourselves to help you to raise finance, to make that financing more attractive. And in the case of power, where finance is normally in hard currency, to enable you to finance some of that in local currency, making it more attractive and more affordable to the poorest in society over time. Because as currencies face challenge and devalue, the people most shut off from infrastructure are often the poorest. And it was interesting, again, preparing to come here and thinking back to my first time in Pakistan, which rather ages me, when the exchange rate was 92 to the dollar. So think about the business imperative. Think about the way in which you can gain competitive advantage. And please talk to me and talk to myself, because we won't do things for you. We're not an international organization coming into Pakistan saying we have answers. What we are here for is to work with the private sector, work with leaders such as yourselves, and say, we can help you to achieve what you want to achieve. So there's a real business imperative to this, as well as the societal one we all read about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request Mr. Aamir Jamil Abbasi to please come on stage and present mementos to our distinguished speakers along with Mr. Talib Kareem. Ms. Samina Rizwan, you are requested to please come forward and accept the memento. Mr. Andrew Bainbridge, please come forward and accept the memento.